or CEQA. Tonight's hearing is being conducted pursuant to the University of California's procedures for the implementation of CEQA. This is not a community meeting regarding the Mount Sutro management project itself. Details about the project scope and implementation are presented in the draft EIR. CEQA requires UCSF to examine in this EIR what the maximum impact of the most aggressive management practices contemplated would be in the reserve. Once the demonstration projects have been implemented and evaluated, a final forest management plan will be developed based on the effectiveness of the practices in the demonstration areas. For more information about the demonstration projects and the community planning process that UCSF undertook in 2009 to 2010, please see the handouts on the signing table. We have held many community meetings regarding the project where we received comments about the project and its implementation. Community meetings were held on May 18, 2009, October 19, 2009, March 24, 2010, June 30, 2010, and July 26, 2010. Walking tours in the reserve with an urban forester were held on October 24, 2009, and November 14, 2009. We will continue to hold additional community meetings in the future to receive additional input and keep people informed on the status of the project. Public notice regarding this hearing and the availability of the draft EIR included at the advertisements in the San Francisco Examiner and Sunset Beacon, postcard mailing to adjacent property owners and about 4,100 households in the Inner Sunset, Forest Knolls, and Edgewood neighborhoods, email notification to a listserv of about 150 people and organizations, and posting on the campus planning website, community relations website, and UCSF events calendar. This meeting will not be conducted in an interactive format. Because the purpose of this hearing is to receive public testimony regarding the draft EIR, UCSF staff will not attempt to respond to the testimony this evening or engage in a dialogue with the public. There are speaker cards on the sign-in table that you may fill out if you wish to speak. This hearing will be transcribed by a court reporter. A complete transcript of this proceeding, as well as all written comments received during the EIR public review period, will be included in and responded to in writing in the final EIR. All comments will be presented to the decision maker, the Regents of the University of California or their designee, for review before considering the certification of the final EIR. The decision maker will then decide whether or not to approve the project. If you do not wish to speak tonight, you may submit written comments which are given equal weight with oral remarks. Written comment forms are available on the table if you would like to use them. You may also supplement any oral testimony given tonight with additional written material. I would like to note that all comments must be received by the close of the public review period on Tuesday, March 19, 2013 at 5:00 p.m. in order to be considered as part of the record. Correspondence should be sent to Diane Wong, UCSF Campus Planning, 654 Minnesota Street, San Francisco, California, 94143-0286. Regarding the hearing tonight, if you would like to speak and have not already signed up, please fill out a speaker card now and return it to the staff. Because there are a large number of people who want to comment tonight, speaking time will be limited to 2 minutes to ensure that everyone who wants to speak has a chance to speak tonight. We will hold up a time card indicating when you have 30 seconds left. If you are in agreement with a previous speaker, you are welcome to state that agreement rather than reiterate the comment. In order for your testimony to be accurately recorded and so that we may respond accurately in the final EIR, please come forward when called and use the microphone. As you begin your remarks, please spell your name for the reporter and indicate the name of any organization you represent. Again, UCSF staff will not respond to the testimony this evening or engage in a dialogue with the public. However, I will be happy to answer any procedural questions about the hearing. Are there any questions that have not been addressed by my comments?
Are there other officers besides yourself that would be representing UCSF at the meeting?
At this meeting tonight, no, I'm the only hearing officer at this night. So I will be calling out speakers in groups of 4 so that those whose names are called can line up for the microphone. So the first 4 speakers are Sally Buckman, Rupa Bose, Dan Knights, Philip Snyder.
Any notification because I don't live in those neighborhoods you mentioned. I live on Downey Street, and I discovered this beautiful treasure 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been going back ever since. I certainly wish it to remain in the state it is in now. I would like to see it protected. I think it is a lush, beautiful forest, and I understand it's providing habitats for birds and animals. And other arborists have said that it is an intact ecological system. It's been there, according to someone who told me tonight, 125 years. There has been no forest fires there in 100 years. So I think there's a fear that maybe not well founded. All I can say is I am going to be speaking to everybody I work with at San Francisco General Hospital to oppose what UC is trying to do here, to destroy most of this beautiful forest in quote-unquote terms of making it better. I don't have any facts. I just came tonight because I only heard about this on Saturday. So again, I urge everybody to cherish this part of San Francisco. It's a transplant even like I am. I've only been here 43 years. I know this forest has been here 125 years. I've seen too many things in San Francisco destroyed for progress. And I don't necessarily agree with the progress that UC is espousing. I will be making more comments in writing. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rupa, R-U-P-A, Bose, B-O-S-E. I'm the webmaster at sutro.com, and really my comment speaks to UCSF's assertion that it's not planning to cut down 30,000 trees. What are the demonstration projects actually trying to demonstrate? We're going to be cutting down an estimated 3,000 trees on 7.5 acres. We're not going to be trying to prove that it improves forest health, which was one of the main reasons to have this project, or that it will improve fire safety, because we're not going to try and set the demonstration plots on fire. So what are we looking at? Essentially, what I learned from the DEIR is that we're looking at how it's going to look, and we're going to look at alternatives to pesticide use. So what I really wonder is, how is this going to guide UCSF in making any kind of decision about how many trees it's ultimately going to fell? The 30,000 comes from extending the same management plan that it's got for those demonstration plots to the rest of the forest. And that seems to make sense in terms of what they really intend. Thank you.
I'm Philip Snyder. I just wanted to say, if you go over to the Presidio, over on the western edge, where that cliff falls down into the ocean, you'll notice that it's changed dramatically in the last several years. Most of the trees have been cut near the edge. If you go soon, you're going to see that a rock slide has already begun over there and is undermining the road that leads along that cliff wall. That was predicted. And the reason is because of the nature of tree roots. Unlike grasses and herbs, tree roots move their little tendrils into cracks and rocks. But unlike grasses, they expand. And when they do, they fracture rock. And they're, in fact, tree roots are one of the major sources of rock fracturing that we know of. Both the Mount Sutro and Mount Davidson and Presidio are, you can assume that the rock has been fractured near the surface, at least with several feet down into the ground. And if you cut too many trees, there's two things that will happen. One, the rain comes straight down on these slopes without any impediments with leaves or tree branches or trunks. And the second one is that the water starts flowing through the ground near the surface. That's what causes rock slides. That's what causes mudslides. We've seen this in forest fires over and over again. If you cut too many trees from these slopes, we're going to see it again. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Dan Neitz, N-E-I-T-Z. I'm a Midtown Terrace resident, a frequent user of Sutro Forest. I don't have any technical background. I concur with much of the comments of the first three speakers and just wanted to express that my love of the beauty and the aesthetic in there really take my kids in there. So I hope that the comments which were handed out tonight, which seem reasonable on paper, I did not read the EIR, that we can hold UCSF accountable to continue to appreciate the respect and beauty that we all enjoy there. Thank you.
The next four speakers are Sam Parr, John Paul, Craig Dawson, and Rez, R-E-Z-Z.
Ladies and gentlemen,
State your name
this is Sam Parr. I'm a journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be painful for you to hear about UCSF, but I'll be pained also. I put this matter into wider perspective. I connect this planned destruction of Sutro to the Department of the Interior's plan to destroy that oyster farm on the coast, a farm that has been on federal land for 80 years. On the one hand, there is the EPA destroying just a sterling private enterprise. And on the other hand, there is hidden private enterprise motivation to destroy the forest. But the EPA against the oyster farm and private enterprise against the forest are forces of the East against the West, against Western business and against the habitat of Westerners. Those stewards of Sutro, for instance, recently got a $100,000 grant from Odwalla. Is that their stewardship? To spoil the forest? Then where is the EPA and for whom? All this hubbub arises from their conniving with City Hall to open up Sutro to the public for trivial pursuit. Trivial pursuit, at that conniving must stop. And I end this speech with, before I moved into the neighborhood, I used to behold the forest from Buena Vista Park. What a lugubrious, mysterious sight. Let not them strip it naked.
My name is John Ball. I live in Midtown Terrace. I don't represent them, but I live there. My concern is that you've got paperwork that refutes or responds to a number of claims being made for example, 30,000 trees, but you never really address the number of trees you do plan to cut. You make statements about not using herbicides and yet using them in small amounts in small areas. The problem is you really don't address a lot of the questions that are being asked. All you do is for example, this meeting, you're just allowing us to talk to a wall effectively. There's no response. You're not addressing in any of the paperwork, and you're not addressing us in any constructive way that would in fact help us to understand what you are doing. I think many of us do have an understanding that there perhaps needs to be a removal of non-native species, but it was done in an organized, rational manner, rather than removing the trees to the extent it seems like you want to do. You might get some support, but I'd really appreciate it if you would address the questions that are being asked and address the fact that they're saying 30,000 trees, but you're not saying how many you're going to cut. I mean, why don't you address some of these issues? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Craig Dawson, D-A-W-S-O-N. I'm the Executive Director of the Sutro Stewards. And I really feel bad about turning my back to you, so I'm going to do something really simple. I'd like to know how many people here tonight have been on Mount Sutro in the last year. Please raise a hand. All right. There's a lot of us that are on the same page here, but there's also a lot of fiction and misrepresentation that's been circulated recently. I'd like to draw your attention back to 1998 when the university first worked to make a management plan with the public. This is a copy of that plan from 1998. It's been on the Sutro Stewards website for several weeks. A lot of people have downloaded it. What's important to recognize is that this draft DIR is all about this management plan. The reporting in the draft DIR talks about things that will take place under a management plan. If it weren't for this management plan being published in 2001, you wouldn't have been up on Sutro most likely, hiking on a beautiful trail and seeing what that forest looks like. Again, because this management plan allows for public access, and it was the Sutro Stewards program that took upon that challenge to allow all of you to get up on that hill and recreate. I don't think that the university is going to do any crazy thing like clear-cutting the forest, cutting down 30,000 trees, a lot of other things I've been hearing about, 90% of the understory destroyed. That's not going to happen. You know why? If you hike those trails, you will realize that from one little area to another, that forest varies tremendously. And if somebody's counting trees on an acre on the South Ridge and then walks over to the north side of the hill, you have an incredibly different habitat, an incredibly different forest. And what the draft DIR and this management plan addresses is adaptive management. Keep that in mind, adaptive management. And also look it up, it's in the plan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rez, also with the Sutro Stewards, and I'd like to say that I understand people's suspicion of the UC, sometimes shadowy organization that plays its cards close to its chest, but having read the draft EIR, I congratulate the UC on having found some tangible goals to study, and I think there are a lot of things to move forward with the UC, and I'd like to remind people who had wonderful times hiking up to the Rotary Meadows to enjoy the forest and are wondering if it's going to be gone. Please consider the fact that a few years ago you couldn't hike to the top because it was completely overgrown, and it's only careful management and careful attention to hydrology and drainage and tree health that's allowed us to enjoy the UC as much as we have. So please consider if you're actually looking to save a forest or keep people out of your backyard.
The next four speakers are Keith McAllister, Dennis Antonori, Robin Scherer, and Kevin King.
I'm Keith McAllister, but I'm speaking for Joe Mascaro, who can't be here, M-A-S-C-A-R-O. My name is Joseph Mascaro. I'm a forest ecologist at the Carnegie Institution for Science in Stanford, California. I wish to deliver my expert opinion as an ecologist, but please note that my views regarding Mount Sutro are not endorsed by or affiliated with the Carnegie Institution for Science. I have worked in forest ecosystems throughout the United States, as well as tropical forests in Central and South America, Oceania, and Australia, where I worked in forests dominated by eucalyptus and acacia species. Having experienced conditions in eucalyptus forests in their native habitat, I believe the management objectives of the Draft Environmental Impact Report by UCSF will have three significant and unnecessary negative impacts on the environment, and in light of these negative impacts, I strenuously object to the proposed management activity. First, the management activity will increase, not decrease, the risk of fire. The present microclimate of the Sutro forest is cool and moist, with predominantly healthy trees. The forest promotes fog drift and blocks wind. By thinning the forest and removing most of the understory vegetation, the management activity will open the canopy of the forest, resulting in drier and hotter dust on the forest floor and a greater risk of fire. Second, the management activity will increase carbon emissions to the atmosphere. Third, the management activity will damage the biological diversity and character of Mount Sutro. The forest on Mount Sutro is indeed a novel ecosystem with many introduced species. Yet it is a diverse, functioning ecosystem providing many services, the most interesting of which is that it provides a small piece of wild nature in the heart of the city. The forest is old, but it may not yet be mature. There is no forest perfectly analogous to what exists on Mount Sutro, a cosmopolitan mix of species much like San Francisco. The fact that the forest is strange to us is not a sufficient justification for destroying it. I urge UCSF to withdraw their management proposal.
My name is Robin Scherer, S-H-E-R-R-E-R. I agree with the gentleman before me, especially because he knows so much more than I do. I have a very emotional response to what's happening to wild places in San Francisco. Every place that has been improved, I don't want to go there anymore. What's happened down at Glen Park, which I know is Reckin Park and has nothing to do with UCSF. Every place that I see that, and somehow these things like slide right by me. And then the Native Species Act, I also, I'm not a native. Perhaps I should go. The buildings aren't native. Perhaps they should go. The Golden Gate Bridge is younger than the forest. Perhaps it should go. So as far as the native, I find that is all sort of plant fascism. I do have a feeling it is so unusual to have a place of true wildness in the city, and to turn it into a garden that's tended is not appealing to me, and it will be another place that I avoid. And I thank you so much for taking our comments, and I look forward to a response. Thank you.
Hi, hello. My name is Kevin King, and I'm a resident. Actually, I grew up in the neighborhood just over the hill. We started, like the guys in the neighborhood, we started tracing through those trails, renegade skateboard ramps, before any of the project of these trails were opened up. So it's been interesting and appealing to see newer visitors arriving on the hill. As the trails have been created, the signage, the gully that leads down to Stanton, that used to be completely overgrown and people would sleep in there. So it is nice that it's opened up and more people from lower down in the city are able to come up and enjoy the forest. There's a huge number of cyclists now that are using the hill up and down. So I think the university has actually been a pretty good steward of the hill, but it is a very tranquil, special place in the city. And its density is actually one of its beauties. It's sort of an exotic jungle-like experience to have right in the middle of San Francisco. as the woman prior to me said, if it's a tended garden, if it's a different environment, it will be not a feeling, a wild feeling. It won't be as, it just won't be the same. I just want you respect the forest as it is. We don't have many places like that left. Thank you.
My name is Dennis Antonori. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Group to UCSF, and I have been for over 20 years. I've been involved in all of these hearings and meetings starting back in 1998. I believe was the first meeting on this particular point. I'd like to let people know that it was the public that asked UCSF to proceed down this route and to decide to make a future for Sutro Forest. There's a lot of concerns from experts, and I know there are experts on both sides about the future of the forest. It's getting to an age where a lot of the trees are past the age of that they normally grow to. In their native habitat, the blue gum eucalyptus is subject to periodic fires, which clear out the smaller trees and unhealthy trees and allow the remaining trees to grow into large, healthy trees. So if you go to Australia, you will find that every one of these eucalyptus forests has been subject to fire. And that's why eucalyptus, in fact, burns so readily and so easily. A lot of people claim that we don't have a fire problem on Mount Sutro because there's a lot of fog that drifts down and keeps the forest moist, and that the understory captures that moisture. That is true most of the time. However, if you go to Angel Island, where the same things were said about moisture, and and dry times come, that forest went off in a major conflagration, and most of those trees burned down. So before you buy the argument that there is no fire danger here, please examine the facts and see where similar circumstances have ended up in fire. And I ask you, in every other instance of the facts that are being put forward here, to please look at the facts themselves. My time is up, but the university is not permitted to respond at this meeting. It's a legal requirement that the public be given this opportunity to express itself, and the university is not legally permitted to respond at this point. They are required to respond in writing to each of the comments. And I urge you to please look at those responses and find out what the real facts are before you make up your minds. And if you make up your mind that you want to oppose this project, that is your right, and I would support your right to do that. But please do so based on facts.
The next four speakers are Jeff Rotter, Paul Rotter, Richard Darrow, and Arnita Bowman.
No. It's actually Neff Rotter, N-E-F-F-R-O-T-T.
Oh, yeah, thank you, sorry.
Okay. In actual fact, in their native place, the eucalyptuses usually live from 200 to 400 years. So the fact that our forest is over 100 years old does not actually affect the vitality of the forest. We have several arborists who have told us that the forest is perfectly healthy, and we tend to agree with that, having visited it regularly. We also feel that the university would be spending millions of dollars to take down these trees, and the university doesn't actually have millions of dollars to spend. Then there's the toxic herbicides that they would use to keep the eucalyptus from resprouting, and that's a really poor way to go about managing a forest. Thank you.
I'm Paul Rotter, R-O-T-T-E-R. The university says that its aim, this project, is to create a safe, healthy, aesthetic, and usable reserve. You will, if you will study this project, you will find out that independent arborists and experts have said that condition now exists. You've heard it, repeated this evening. The idea that the university proposes to employ the usual program for native plant restoration. The science that's used is flawed, employing unnecessary destruction of healthy trees, destruction of undergrowth, and extensive application of toxic herbicides. The idea that the land will then remain free of non-native plants is a non-starter. The San Francisco Recreation and Park Department has been employing similar programs for years, and they are still throughout city parks in the city, they are still trying to eradicate non-native plants by using herbicides. A similar project by the University of California in the East Bay said that they should expect to use herbicides for 10 years after trees are removed. The singular environmental issue today is global climate change. The science is overwhelming and the warnings are dire. Everything we do now either makes things better or makes things worse. What the university is proposing in this local area will make it worse. Somehow the university has taken on the role of a science denier. That they think they've taken the position that things aren't so bad that we can't do a little bit of damage and not get away with it. Well, we won't get away with it. We're in a situation, we're in a time where every tree counts. Every tree on Mount Sutro counts. And we should save them. Thank you.
I'm Richard Darrow, D-A-R-R-O-U-G-H. And the arborist UC brought in said that the current condition is not for optimal growth. And when you think of cutting trees to a 30-foot distance, that's not going to improve the growth condition, especially with the pesticides and everything else. It's a beautiful, pristine, wild place. It's just amazing that such a place exists in San Francisco. We don't need to ride and jog through it. We don't need to have wheelchairs. We don't need to have anything going through it, because it's just great having it as it is and for the wildness that it is. Thank you.
I'm Arnita Bowman. It's A-R-N-I-T-A-B-O-W-M-A-N. And I would like to say thank you to the stewards, actually, for building the trails. That's a wonderful addition. I have to say, it's like that has little to do with this plan and what they're planning to do with the forest that most of us love so much. To me, UCSF needs to stop this plan and go back to the drawing board. It is baffling how UCSF can treat a dynamic and healthy forest like garbage. It's just because it's the tree's origin. Plants, just like people, should not be judged based on their origins, but on what they actually do. San Francisco needs the forest for its health benefits. Forests are the city's lungs and absorb air pollutants and CO2 while releasing oxygen. San Francisco, California, the rest of the world, we all need these forests as far as for sequestering carbon and helping to reduce global warming. San Francisco needs to continue to keep the forest, because even though the forest isn't native, there's a lot of wildlife that lives, the forest wildlife that lives in the Sutro forest. And for us, it's like it's a wonderful place to be able to escape to, because it's like you're so secluded from the rest of San Francisco. And I guess the other big thing to me is UCSF needs to think about when they're spending the scarce university funds. It's very offensive to me, the idea that this would be a top priority. Because I think there's a lot of more educational and research things that would be more of a priority for funds. And then the other thing that really bothers me is that UCSF's credibility as far as when they've been saying that there's not 30,000 trees that are going to be cut down. Because that's what this plan allows, is for 30,000 trees to be cut down. And San Francisco really needs more trees, not less trees.
The next four speakers are Dolan Irgel, Judith May Schumacher, Ron Proctor, and Jackie Proctor.
I appreciate the comments of so many people.
Please state your name, sir, and spell your name.
I'm Dolan Irgel, E-A-R-G-L-E. I'm retired from the pharmaceutical chemistry department, and I used to work every day through the forest from down Cherry. down the street, not far away, every day. Now, what bothers me is that something is not being said at all. The question that I have is, who initiated this project at UCSF? Did someone come in from the outside and say, let's do this because we're going to make a little money out of this? Who are these people? Do we have an individual who's on the staff at UCSF? I don't think I haven't heard anybody say that they are responsible for it. And the sources of the initial meeting here, the request came from whom and where? The other thing is that are there anyone who's getting compensation or organization that is getting compensation for all of this removal of all of these trees? Somebody out there is making a lot of money or intending to. I was in this building a few years ago. Right downstairs, a fellow named Jake Sig, one of the Natural Areas Program, one of the Napsters. They're vicious people. They're coming in and they're cutting out a huge amount of Glen Canyon Park. Right now, I can't go back. I will not go back. I can't stand to see dead trees. Now, what is the profit? Who's standing to profit by this, and by how much? We need answers.
My name is Judith May Schumacher, S-C-H-U-M-A-C-H-E-R. I'm a homeowner on Fifth Avenue between Irving and Judah. And I too have been in this forest since the 1950s. I grew up here. It occurs to me that the list of environmental woes that plagues the entire planet are all things that no one set out to deliberately do. Henry Ford did not say, aha, let's bring the air. But they're all unintentional consequences of human intervention. And that in a plan like this, where we have a working forest, and if I assume the total goodwill of UCSF, we're still interfering in a way that's going to have unintended consequences. Nobody's looking to restore grizzly bears to San Francisco. We don't need to worry about native plants, but we do have many, many native animals to this area who have adapted over the years, have adapted to to having to live with humans, who live now safely in Mount Sutro. There should be a zero tolerance policy for any herbicides, any pesticides at all. And I think when you think about a plan, maybe what we really need, if there is truly concern about fire, then why don't we have a fire plan, a fire management plan that we're working on, and not cutting down trees in the forest? Thank you.
My name is Jackie Proctor, Jacquerouctor. I'm one of the historians. My book is listed in the appendix for the cultural resource evaluation. The draft DIR claims to have reviewed the plans for projects throughout San Francisco area, the Bay Area, reaches the incorrect conclusion that no other similar large vegetation management activities have been identified. The San Francisco Recreation and Park Department is engaged in a massive tree removal project. Its natural areas program intends to replace over 18,000 trees with grassland and dune scrub. It's also destroying hundreds of historic park trees because of lack of funds to maintain them. Park facility construction projects are resulting in the destruction of even more trees. The full scale of all these projects is not yet known, but within the implementation period of the proposed project in Mount Sutro, tens of thousands of trees will be destroyed on the public lands of the San Francisco Peninsula. The GGNRA and the Presidio are also engaged in many similar projects which destroy non-native trees for the purpose of converting landscape to grassland and dune scrub. The converted landscape will not be capable of sequestering or storing as much carbon as the trees that are being destroyed. It is not accurate for the draft DIR to say there are no other similar large vegetation management activities in San Francisco. The draft DIR confirms that the Sutro Forest is a historic cultural resource and qualifies for landmark designation. The government standards for treatment of historic cultural landmarks such as this one require its preservation and replacement in kind for restoration. To comply with historic preservation laws, the management plan must be revised to include objectives and implementation measures for maintaining the character defining features of this historic forest through pruning, crown pruning and cleaning, cabling, and replanting of dead trees with the same species. Thank you.
Brian Proctor, Proctor. I am speaking in support of leaving the Sutro Forest alone. I've lived in the area for over 33 years and strongly protest your proposed plan. You have not convinced me why the forest is bad for us. Fire hazard? No? Too dense? Maybe that's it? San Franciscans have identified Mount Sutro not only as a unique geological feature of the city, but as a special treasure, a wooded retreat within the city that affords them a natural experience to see the trees and wildlife abound, and to enjoy the opportunities for recreation within the forest, for hiking, biking, exploring, even exploring the native plant garden. The preservation of open green space in San Francisco is of utmost importance. Cutting down the cloud forest would have a devastating impact. It must be preserved for all of our benefit now and for future generations. The Sutro Forest is a relatively young forest. Blue gum eucalyptus can live from 200 to 500 years. And within the dense forest, there's less wind, more shade, less flammable vegetation on the forest floor. Foggy San Francisco provides for that, the moist conditions. All these factors comprise a reduction in any fire hazard. In conclusion, it's surprising to me that UCSF should undertake this controversial, expensive, and environmentally unfriendly plan. How can you justify spending money on this project when UC tuition is constantly increasing, when budgets are tight and shrinking? Oh, and sequestration is going to be happening. Maybe your surplus money can go to the state to help them out. Is your real motive for the plan to develop the property? Are you planning to clear the property for future development? For additional building space, perhaps? Are you aware of the damage this would do to destroy one of the few forests that exist in San Francisco? I ask you to revise the proposed project to limit the number of trees that will be removed only to those that are currently dead. Thank you.
Our next four speakers are Lou Relling, Dan Schneider, Courtney Anderson, and Henry King.
I'm Lou Relling, and I'm really happy to be here with so many people who enjoy the Mount Sutro Forest that I enjoy. And by that I mean everyone here. I've been clapping after hearing every speaker because I know every speaker feels that they're saying what's best for this city forest, for this treasure, is doing it based on the best information they have available, has goodwill towards this common treasure. And I feel the same way about UCSF. We don't know what hidden agendas there may be. There's some question about those, but it also may be that everyone sincerely here is trying to help. Now, having said that and saying that I appreciate everyone's comments and everyone's presence and everyone's points of view, doesn't mean I don't have a strong point of view of my own. I feel it's very important to oppose approval of this draft EIR. And the reason is that it provides a sort of blank check for UCSF after it does whatever demonstration projects it does to proceed in ways that could have pretty dramatic effects on a landscape that's important to a lot of us. Clearly there are dueling experts. We've been asked to look at the facts, but the facts are not completely adding up. And I'm not a botanist. I know a little about language, and I can see that some of the language that's being used in the fact sheets and informational websites and other materials that are provided is sometimes puzzling. I don't know if it's disingenuous or just confused, but people and facts are not speaking to one another in a way that's most helpful. That means things need to stop or slow down, and approving this draft EIR would be problematic because those issues that haven't been resolved wouldn't get resolved. The clarity we need might not be found. This is really important, and fortunately there's not an emergency. Nothing needs to happen right now. That doesn't mean that long-term stewardship doesn't mean some changes should happen. But now is not the time to say yes to something that down the road we might not be listened to enough, all the voices that need to be heard before really dramatic changes take place. Thank you for listening to me too.
Hello, my name is Dan Schneider, SCHNEIDER. I've been working with the Sutro Stewards for at least the last 10 years. I'm also with a group called SF Urban Riders, but I speak for myself today. I do appreciate all the great thoughts from people that appreciate the trails, because like a lot of people have said, that opportunity is rather new. It's only come about the last 5 years, and I think, again, we've all appreciated that. In regards to the conversation, I, like some other people that spoke, want to just see this, emotion is great and we all have opinions and that's excellent, but I want the facts to be somewhat clear. First of all, with the history of the mountain, it does have a pretty great history, but that history may not be exactly what everybody's hearing. In 1828, Mount Sutro was actually the point that referenced the first map done by Captain William Frederick Beechey that actually mapped the San Francisco Bay, and you can find that at the Bancroft Library in Berkeley if you want to look it up. In 1904, it was listed as a great place to hike with wonderful views in 1904. As far as logging has been a big part of the mountain ever since. In 1900, there's an estate, again from the Sutro estate from the Bancroft Library. The trees on the San Miguel Ranch have grown to such a size that they interfere with each other. It is extremely desirable that some of the trees should be cut out and the forest thinned so as to allow the remaining trees to get enough air and light to enable them to develop properly. To do this without expense, they got a court order, etc., etc. In 1930s, it was actually forested with the U.S. through the U.S. government's WPA. We also have that. I'm not advocating to cut down the forest. What I'm trying to say is look at all the facts that are actually out there. And in regards to that, some of the people in this meeting and some of the people out in my life have been emotionally duped by some of the hysteria, and I'm not trying to fault people for spreading information, but a lot of people that are out there voting for this and stepping up actually think that the message is being spread by the Sutro Stewards, and that is something that I take as rather personal, because I want to make sure everybody's at least understanding the facts, like a lot of people have said, and representing from a factual point of view, not necessarily representing any one organization, because they might not necessarily represent the facts either. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney Anderson. I actually work at UCSF. UCSF, speaking on behalf of myself. I live in the neighborhood, and I grew up by the Presidio. Everyone that's been so well-spoken, and I want to echo most of the comments, especially by Kevin King and the woman with the dog. I grew up in the Presidio as my backyard, and it was the most exhilarating thing to go into total wild natural space. I don't know if you all have witnessed also what's happened at the Presidio. It's basically been cut down so that big homes can have great views, and to restore natural habitats, which I find curious because they always plant them and they die promptly. But mostly I wanted to comment on the fire hazard risk, because I'm 32 years old and have lived here all my life, and my dad is a fifth-generation San Franciscan, and there's never been a fire in the Presidio, there's never been a fire in Mount Sutro, there's never been a fire on Mount Davidson. I understand the Oakland Hills fire had some eucalyptus trees in it, but I like the woman in the black who spoke most recently, the facts aren't lining up for me, and I went to school, and it's almost insulting to say that it's a fire hazard when I know that there are other priorities, such as roads like Sutter Street and Pine Street that have giant holes in them, and when I drive my car, it's more of a risk than if my house were to burn down or my apartment were to burn down. So I would ask that the UC Regents consider reprioritizing. Thanks.
We're just quacking to them.
Sir,
Well, we put
excuse
that
me,
on the ballot for referendum.
Sir, thank you very much. Henry King, is there a Henry King in this who wishes to speak?
It's not a democracy.
Okay, the next four speakers are John Seagrave, Madeline Howland, Dave Parrish, and Louis Blumberg.
My name is John Seagrave, S-E-A-G-R-A-V-E, and I don't really like eucalyptus trees. I think there's a lot of other trees that we could grow. And yes, they're big. Yes, they have shade, but that's about all they have going for them, in my mind.
My name is Madeline Hovland, H-O-V-L-A-N-D. I live in Oakland on Alvarado Road, and that happens to be in the area that burned in the 1991 Oakland fire. I represent the Hills Conservation Network. We are an organization that believes that there are too many trees, including too many eucalyptus trees, that are being cut down in the East Bay. We have a lot of good things to say about eucalyptus trees, but I won't go into that right now. They've certainly been scapegoated. The supposed fire hazard on Mount Sutro has been way overstated. As anyone knows who has hiked Mount Sutro's trails, for most of the year the ground is damp under the shady canopy of the tall trees. It is only in the deforested areas where native plant gardens have been planted that the ground is dry if it is not irrigated regularly. Many of the trees in Sutro Forest are so tall that they are well up into the fog. That is why many people who love Sutro Forest, as I do, say it is a cloud forest. When the fog is swirling around as you walk and you can't see the tops of the trees, you get an otherworldly feeling, as if you're surrounded by clouds. Mount Sutro's giant trees, like the giant redwoods in your woods, trap the moisture in the fog, so when the fog lifts, drops of water fall from tree branches onto the understory and the ground. Does anyone claim that Mount Sutro's trees are less functional and beneficial in doing this good work because they were not here in prehistoric times? We hope that is not true. UCSF med school doctors know that the saying, "First do no harm," is based on an interpretation of the Hippocratic Oath, which begins with these words: I will follow that regimen which, according to my ability and judgment, I consider for the benefit of my patients, and abstain from whatever is deleterious and mischievous. UCSF's plan to essentially destroy Sutro Forest is both deleterious and mischievous. Removing so many trees from the forest will actually raise the fire risk. Adolf Sutro loved trees. He is the one who in the 1800s planted the eucalyptus and other non-natives on Mount Sutro. Before he planted the trees there, it was a barren hill. There was nothing green there. He planted trees all over San Francisco because he wanted to beautify the city. Almost 150 years ago, Adolf Sutro envisioned the beautiful green forest that Mount Sutro has become. To destroy that forest would deprive San Francisco of a unique treasure and do much harm by increasing the fire risk.
Everybody. Hi, Dave Parrish, Parrish. I'm a neighbor of Mount Sutro. I've lived on Carmel Street for the past 8 years and then lived on Ashbury for about 7 years before that. So the entirety of my time here in San Francisco has been spent in the neighborhood. And I'm here selfishly because I love Mount Sutro. I think most of the folks here are here for a similar reason. I've also had the benefit of attending several years of meetings like this one. It's heartening to see so many of my neighbors and concerned folks about Mount Sutro out here tonight. My experience of this process and talking to UCSF and talking to my neighbors has mostly been a positive one. It's mostly been one in which we've had sunshine on what UCSF is proposing to do. There's been a lot of input from neighbors. The plan has evolved over time. And the opinion that I've come to, and by the way, I came to this process basically just loving the mountain, but with no expertise that I love the mountain and I love the ability to recreate up there, is that we can't take no action. That we can't leave the mountain how it is. That the mountain, based on the input that we've gotten from experts, is not helping, and that the trees are not helping. And so I definitely support the progressive plan that UCSF has to address that head on. I think if we don't do that, Mount Sutro is not going to be a safe, healthy, happy place for us to recreate 50 years from now. And so I encourage the university to continue with its plans. I thank my neighbors for being out here, and I encourage everybody who's here and interested in this issue to stay involved. This is not the last meeting. This is not the last step in the process. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. I'm Louis Bloomberg, Blumberg, and I live on Stanton Street, and my house backs up onto the forest by the interior part, the city property. And I, like everybody here, really love the Sutro Forest, and I've been walking in there and using that for recreation and solace for the 15 years that I've lived on Stanton Street. I also support the plan and the proposed project in the draft EIS. I think it's thorough and thoughtful. It's a decent plan, and I think it meets the intent of CEQA. I'm a former employee of the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, and what we're seeing here tonight is what I've seen around the state and around the world, is there's a big dispute about forest management and cutting trees. And that's the fundamental issue. Is active management appropriate or not? And I believe it is. In my experience, in my little part of the forest shows that it is. We were able to convince the city to cut down 3 hazard trees that had fallen, some limbs had broken the fence, and we saw a lot of light, we saw flowering nasturtiums, and a lot more birds activity than one little part of the forest. So I think professional foresters can do good work. When we have street trees, we thin them, they come back, they grow, they're healthy. When I was a kid and the dentist told me I needed to have my wisdom teeth out, I didn't say leave them in, I didn't want him to touch them. I trusted him, he took them out. It was painful, but he took them out. So, thinning the forest is not clear cutting, and it could be, not necessarily, it could be ugly. So I think we have a great example. If you've been in the forest this week and hiked the trails, you can see the beautiful flowering plum trees because there's more space and you can look through the forest. However, there are parts of the trail maintenance there, trail creation, where I think they've cut too many trees. And there's a patch right now that looks pretty open. So I think that the issue for the EIS to reconsider is the 30-foot spacing. I think it's too much. We don't need trees spaced that way. I could not find in the document the rationale for a 30-foot spacing. So I would urge a spacing of 10 feet and potentially 20. I would say that this is cheaper for you. I think you can deal to some extent with the carbon by mulching the trees and burying the chips in the earth and put the carbon back into the ground immediately. I think you should establish a maintenance plan and create an endowment for the implementation of the maintenance and the monitoring plan. I think security remains an issue there, and I urge you to go forward with the plan. Thank you.
The next four speakers are Terry Thompson, Dan Grassetti, Booth Haley, and Ariane Eroy. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Hi there. My name is Terry Thompson, Thompson. I'm a Midtown Terrace homeowner. I just have a few questions, and my ultimate concern is not so much the trees, but the wildness and the animals that call the forest home. Now, I don't know how you can take out 30 trees, 300 trees, or 30,000 trees and not gravely affect the animals that live there. It says in this piece of paper that you've consulted with 2 foresters. 2? That whole forest? And you talk to 2 people? Ridiculous. You should probably redefine your definition of native. There are millions of eucalyptus trees up and down the coast, so I urge you to think about your definition of native. And then, secondly, lastly, I guess, it's a hugely emotional issue. And my view is just keep it wild. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think if you've ever been in that forest any time of the year, it's soaking wet. I don't think it takes a genius, an arborist, a forester, or PhD, anything, to go in there and figure out that if you just leave it alone, it certainly isn't going to burn down. Okay? That's it. Leave it alone. Leave it wild.
Hi, I'm Dan Grassetti, and I'm with the Hills Conservation Network, an Oakland-based environmental group that's been dealing with these sorts of issues for the last 7 years. So this is kind of old hat to us, and these meetings are sort of old hat to us. So some of what I'm going to say may sound a little bit cynical, but the regents probably can handle it. We recently actually sued East Bay Regional Park District over a 19,000-acre project that was going to remove about 1 million trees on the East Bay Ridgeline. And while we didn't get everything we want, we did get a substantial improvement. And I hate to say it, but I think that if this goes the way these things normally do, the good folks of the San Francisco area will probably end up in the same position that we were in, finding that that's really the only recourse. But having said that, we'll try the other way. So 30,000 trees, I read the propaganda coming in here, and there's a tendency for the university to treat these kinds of problems as PR challenges rather than really dealing with the issues. Because of course the regents really don't care what anybody in this room has to say. My cynicism coming through. This is native plant restoration. That's what it's about. And the university probably has some development or some financial agenda. Who knows? Maybe Dick Blum is going to make some money off of this, like he's made off of all the other projects. Thank you. Native plants are highly flammable. Don't forget that. So if you're concerned about fire risk mitigation, then don't worry about non-natives, because the natives burn really well. That's what they're supposed to do. Angel Island. Somebody brought up Angel Island. That's hilarious. Angel Island had no history of fires in recorded history. Then some yahoos went and cut down all the eucalyptus trees, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. Place burned to the ground. As far as the herbicide, I read the propaganda saying, oh, well, we'll be really careful about it. Well, the fact is, in order to kill a eucalyptus tree, you have to apply this Garlon stuff to the trunk twice a year for 10 years. The stuff washes into the watersheds, it goes everywhere, and it's extremely toxic, and it's going to kill off a lot of critters that everybody here probably would like to see live. So I'll just finish up here by saying this project is just a monumental waste of public money to implement a large-scale gardening project. How can this be justified in light of UC's apparent inability to support its core mission of providing education? This meeting is little more than a legal requirement, and we sincerely believe that the UC Regents will ignore all of this input. Well, my sort of input, maybe not the other sort. If UC Regents certify this, as we assume they will, my group will certainly support folks in San Francisco who decide to sue the EIR. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Booth Haley, Haley. I'm a student at UCSF, maybe the only one here, and editor of the Synapse student paper on campus. And I'm originally from Seattle, where every hill is covered in trees. And a hill covered in trees is amazing, but a hill with a view is even more amazing. And that's why I love California. It's kind of an aside. But I do support the UCSF and its forest management plan. They are not trying to clear cut Mount Sutro. They are not trying to make it into a carefully maintained garden. They are just thinning the forest. That's all they're doing. That's good for a forest. It's done, on a very regular basis in all the forests in the Northwest. It will neither destroy the forest nor will it make it less wild. I do personally hope it will open up a few views. Again, that's kind of a side note. The university is being very careful and reasonable, and they have repeatedly expressed their commitment to maintaining a forest preserve. On another note, I think a lot of the students live in the inner Sunset, and there's been some recent trail additions to the mountain, but still there's no good access from the northwest corner of the park. Why not add a trailhead from Corette Way, like right where Kirkham hits the mountain there above the dental school parking lot? That trailhead would make it easier for all the residents, not just students who live in the inner Sunset, to access the historic trail, which traverses very close to Corette Way. Right now, it feels kind of like the mountain's accessible more to, a few elite neighborhoods, and I'd like to see it more accessible to the larger population that lives to the north and west of it. And I want to again thank the Sutro stewards for the work they've already done, building really nice trails up there, and hope we can all continue to enjoy the mountain together. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ariane Eroy, and I live in the Richmond district. I've lived in San Francisco for 20 years. At a time when the planet faces catastrophic climate change and massive species extinction, I'm left wondering why UCSF would choose to remove thousands of trees, maybe 30,000 trees, at a time when we need every tree. These trees are our community, they are our family. We need them and they need us. 2 years ago, at the climate talks in Durban, South Africa, the scientists said we had 5 to 7 years to turn around the threats and influences that threaten our very existence on planet Earth. Humanity is not above extinction. It's not the third world only that's threatened. America's threatened, San Francisco's threatened, your children are threatened, your animals are threatened. Everything about this life and this way of life is threatened. We either come together and take care of each other and learn to share and heal each other, or we will not make it out of here alive, nor will our children, nor will this city. In December 2012, there were talks about the end of the Mayan calendar, and there was a lot of pop spirituality and, superficial dialogue about it. But what we needed to learn from that was that the Mayans ended their calendar because they went extinct, and they were faced at the height of their civilization with the same vectors that face us: lack of timber, lack of water, and chronic warfare. Will we learn the lesson that we need to learn? Will we embrace the challenge and come together and work together and embrace the life in all its forms and all its beauty? Save Mount Sutro.
The next four speakers are Lena Emery, Rupert Clayton, Carolyn Nagy, and Andrew Blade.
Hello, my name is Lena Emery, E-M-M-E-R-Y, and I'm fortunate enough to live right at the corners of the forest, where all of us enjoy, because of the Sutro stewards and the trails that are put in. Please don't think this is a wild place. Wild places do not have beautifully groomed trails that we can all walk on. Forests need management, just like people need management, and they need care. That's what's going to be happening. That's what the UC is trying to do. I don't know how anybody can think that the university would want to destroy a forest. That's just, I don't know where that kind of wrong-headed thinking comes from. So I think we all need to kind of sit back and look at it and understand that the forest is being managed so that we can continue to enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Rupert Clayton, C-L-A-Y-T-O-N. I live at Parnassus and Willett, about 2 blocks from here, right by the forest. I'm speaking to support the project and the EIR with a few exceptions. I would like to cover the exceptions first of all. It's unclear whether there will be any meaningful public involvement in the review of the demonstration projects. The project is structured to allow the first 3 demonstration projects to inform the next one and the continued implementation. And it's reasonable to require that those decision processes are open to the public and include the public. But beyond that, the opponents of the management plan say that it's a myth that eucalyptus is flammable. I don't know, maybe they weren't in the Bay Area in 1991. On October 20th, when the Open Hills Fire burned through a pretty similar landscape of hillside homes and eucalyptus forests. 25 people died then. 150 people were injured. There were 3,000 homes destroyed. $1.5 billion worth of damage. So faced with that memory, the people who opposed this plan somehow claimed that Sutro Forest is the world's only non-flammable blue gum plantation. That thinning the forest into areas where there is some mixed grasslands, some native shrubs, is somehow going to make it more flammable. The US Forest Service says blue gum eucalyptus is highly flammable, should not be planted near homes or other structures. The FEMA official report on the East Bay fire says that eucalyptus has a tremendous production of both leaf and bark litter. It's not readily consumed or broken down in the non-decomposition process. It leads to the presence of high volumes of fuel. And the heaviest fuel loading in that fire area occurred in the untreated eucalyptus stands. There are estimates of between 30 and 50 tons per acre. So, in the face of this evidence, we're faced with some people who seem to be willing to try to make the forest non-flammable by force of will. I think the skills of the arborists who have analysed this and the time that's been put into this plan indicate a reasonable managed plan that I urge the Regents to support.
Carolyn Nagy and Andrew Blay. Are they here? Okay. The next 4 speakers are Nancy McNally, Mark Vendetti, Gerard Livernois, and Benjamin Pease.
My name is Nancy McNally. I was born in San Francisco in 1949, and I've been a public tree planter since 1969. I've watched SLUG, an organization in San Francisco, the San Francisco League of Urban Gardeners, be completely ruined by Mayor Brown and Anderson. It no longer exists. I now have seen the Arboretum start being charged entry. The soccer fields are soon to be covered in plastic. AstroTurf. I thought that the AstroTurf was unbelievable. As a native San Franciscan, I could not believe that this was even being considered. And now, Sutro Forest, it's just inconceivable to me. When Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, she was ridiculed by esteemed scientists, by the government, because she suggested that DDT was killing our creatures. Well, she turned out to be right. We almost lost all our pelicans, literally. Because she brought to our attention DDT, we now have pelicans. If not for her, we would have none. So all I have to say is, I don't buy any of this Sutro Forest expertise at all. I've seen too many experts in my lifetime dictate their personal agenda. And native plants, what is that? That's like Zen Buddhism or Fruitarian. You just decided, oh, I like native plants, therefore everybody has to do this. Well, there's nothing about San Francisco that has anything to do with what the native plants, if they are in fact native plants. The land is completely different now. It's filled with smog and 1 million people. So whatever was native 200 years ago cannot survive the current pollution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Vendetti, and I grew up in Forest Knolls neighborhood, and used to play on Mount Sutro when I was a little kid, 50 years ago. And I've been also heartened at all the amazing testimony that we've heard tonight from both sides. I almost feel like I have a good start on my botanical degree after all this. But I do not support what the regents are proposing here. I'm an appreciator of wild spaces, and I believe there are far too few of them left to us. It takes hundreds of years to grow beautiful wild spaces, but only a very, very short period of time to demolish them, and then they're gone forever. This space, I'm not sure what the possible ulterior motives are. It doesn't make any sense to me what's being proposed either. But I definitely would recommend that this EIS be not approved. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Gerard Livernois. I live in the south of Markham area, and I have a art studio, and I've been doing photography for 3 years with a vantage viewpoint of Mount Sutro, of Sutro Tower, and Sutro Tower sunrises and sunset have been astronomical, just unbelievable. So my viewpoint is at 18th and Treat, so I look up the block between 17th and 18th. To the left is Twin Peaks, which is barren. To the right are the eucalyptus forests, and the interaction of the fog, the wind, and nature with that forest is phenomenal. And I have over 600 gigabytes of photos of that tree line and the fog hitting it and the interaction of the fog with it. And without that tree line, if that tree line were lessened, the impact on the mission and the temperature of the mission, I don't know if anyone studied that, but I do have a very strong visual proof, and even coming to this neighborhood often, the difference in the temperature and the environmental impact of removing some of those trees on the rest of the city. I do hope that somebody is able to predict the outcome of that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ben Pease. I'm a resident of the Richmond District. I've been hiking in Mount Sutro since 35 years at least, and co-founded the Sutro Stewart, speaking for myself. A couple things I would say. It's a beautiful place. It's not static. The forest is growing older, as we see. I'd like to see it continue as a forest that is 200 years old or 400 years old when we get that far. But at the same time, as it is, leaving things exactly as they are is going to be a messy solution. Not opposed to messy solutions. But when I go out on trail builds as a supervisor, I'm always leaning on things. I'm sometimes leaning on shovels. When I don't have a shovel, I lean against a tree. I've been leaning on saplings, and the saplings move. They wobble. They practically drop branches on us. They are stressed by drought. They're stressed by being shaded out by the larger trees. The beetles that are eating the leaves these days. Something has to be done to keep the forest a little more open than it is now. We benefit from the work that was done in the 1930s to almost drastically thin the forest. Back in those days, the widely spaced trees we have on the South Ridge today are that way because they had the light from being spaced out wider than they were at that time. There were historically fires, that's why the trees were thin back in the 1930s, 1920s, 1910s. Dan's research has proven that fires did occur. So I'm hoping that I'm a little bit concerned about comments about removing up to 90% of the brush and undergrowth. I would wonder if there's a way to define situations where there might be ways of leaving 20%, 60%. There's places where the vegetation, the undergrowth is native and quite desirable. I would like to see a little more definition of what the right conditions are for leaving that in place and not having it all gobbled up by goodness. But aside from that, something's going to happen. We've been on committees with the UC for 10 years and have to go forward and have the ability to go ahead and make some improvements to the forest. I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
The next four speakers are Mark Schumann, Ambi Venkatarayan, Megan Lemer, and Matthew Dove. So is Ambi Venkatarayan or Megan Lemer? Okay, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Megan Lemer, and I'm fortunate enough to live in the 1200 block of Stadium Street. So my backyard is Sutro Forest. I bought my house in 1972 because it was an awesome backyard. So I raised 3 kids there, and it was an amazing place for them to play. The first thing I'd like to say is it is not true that there are no forest fires. I came home one day and found my neighbor, who is a firefighter, washing down my deck because we did have a forest fire in Mount Sutro, so it does happen. And according to my neighbor, who is now a retired firefighter, it is a significant hazard. But yes, it has happened, and I'm very glad he was there and that my house didn't burn down. So whatever people have said, it is a risk, it does happen. The other thing that happened is my husband and I had been to see Angels in America, where the angel comes crashing down through the ceiling. We came home and it was a very wet year, and a 50-foot tree came crashing down and missed our house by about 4 feet. And talk about protecting wildlife. They're not just our cat, but a couple of raccoons and a skunk came racing out of that forest like hell had broken open. So, and apparently what's right behind our house is not UC, but city, county of San Francisco, because our homeowner's insurance didn't want to move that tree, and so there was quite a bit of debate, and the city came out and chopped up that tree. But either last winter or the winter before, another one of those trees came down and crashed on our neighbor. But long story short, those trees are coming down. They have a shallow root system. They are dying. I was at some of the 2009, 2010 meetings. It sounds like UC does have a good plan. I'd like to know more about it, but that forest does need some attention. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Matthew Dove. That's D-O-V-E, like the bird. I work at the Presidio Community YMCA, where I run the bicycle program there. I'm originally from Boston. I'm an urban kid who loves wild spaces. I grew up exploring all the forests near my house, and today I work at the bicycle program doing the same thing for kids that I meet in the city here in San Francisco. Mount Sutro has been a wonderful resource for our program. We bring kids up there to explore those trails on their bicycles for the first time, and open up these children's eyes to what it means to be in a beautiful natural place. I feel everybody's concern for the beautiful environment around them. However, I do think that especially urban open spaces like this need to be safe and in a condition where they can be used by the population so that we can actually foster that kind of love of the environment in our neighbors who may not otherwise have the chance to do so. So I do support management of the forest. I also am not a botanist. I am not an environmental science background. I have a language degree, but I think that as long as that management is done properly, I think it's an important thing to do. Thank you.
The next 4 speakers are Noan. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is V. Ambi, A-M-B-I. I have lived in this neighborhood I've owned a home in Forest Lawn for more than 25 years. And my family and I have enjoyed the forest for all these years. Frankly, long before the Sutro stewards got involved, and I frankly don't understand really the connection between Sutro stewards and UCSF, which is a leading medical school in the country. This forest is different. I've lived in many countries. I've lived in 8 countries. And there are forests everywhere in the world. There are forest fires everywhere in the world. And people are trying to conserve forests, not destroy forests. Across the world, there are fires. Fires need to be managed, obviously. Forests have to be made safe. But they don't go around cutting down forests. Now, the centuries-old cloud forest here is very unique. It's a great gift of nature for us, and it has been an absolute integral part of our ecosystem here. It's invaluable, it's irreplaceable. It takes hundreds of years to create a forest like that. Yet, it's a relatively young forest. Obviously, it needs management, active management, but not felling of trees. That's not called management of forests. Native plant restoration, obviously, is very important, although it's very difficult to define what native really means. We've seen this across the world. You can define it any which way you want. But in order to preserve and restore native plants, It's not necessary to destroy the forest. There are sufficient open spaces in the Bay Area and in San Francisco where we can experiment with the restoration of native plants. And I go for walks often where native plant restoration has taken place, and as somebody mentioned, they are all dying off as soon as they are planted. It's very, very difficult in this environment to cultivate and really create restored native plants. But they can be done elsewhere. Destruction of a neighborhood will have serious negative consequences, predictable and unintended consequences. So I would urge UCSF to desist from felling trees and using herbicides and focus instead on restoration and building. And I would hope that the UC Regents and the UCSF are listening and not just conducting a hearing. Thank you very much.
The next four speakers are Glenn Agri or Erie, Mark Gould, Craig Morton, and John Manning.
Thank you. Glenn Agri, E-G-R-I-E. Much of what I wanted to say has been spoken already by other participants tonight. I'm an Edgewood resident, and I am a father of two small children and enjoy the forest immeasurably. Primarily, I want to say I ardently protest the plans as stated, mostly because the data is incomplete, and there's a lot of conflicting data. I am a physical scientist and not an environmental scientist. However, my reading of the data is such that the rationale for the fire safety is incomplete, and there's refutable evidence in that, as well as the plan structure how to maintain healthy status of the forest. In support of management of the forest, but not as it exists in this particular plan. So I want to say that I wish there be further review and that this plan as it's written not progress. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Mark Gould. I've lived in the Cove Valley area for over 30 years, raised a family, friends, we've all traipsed through the mountain. And all kudos to the stewards of the park, but there have been many, many trails in that forest previous in the 80s and other times. And over the times I've seen many beautiful areas that have irises and things, and because of the lack of maintenance and the funding for that, which has been mentioned in their reports over the years, hasn't kept up. You have a situation where the forest is in threats in certain ways. But I feel that it's very important for the environment, the UC, to really listen to what the community is saying here. Basically, we're worried that this place is going to look like hell for a number of years, and maybe that's really not what we need to do right now. What's the hurry to do such a drastic, vague, when you read the EIR, which I did last night, it's, an incredible document, but there's vagaries as to what kind of, it's a disconnect when you take a walk there and you wonder what it's going to look like. There's 3 to 4 different areas on the mountain that are going to have these demonstrations, and then based on whatever they decide, there'll be more work going on. They say that a quarter of the mountain will be going on only, but that could be a very noisy, disconcerting, disruptive for the environment, for the neighbors and the community and the city. And in addition to that, I feel that we should reconsider entirely, based on the precautionary principle, the use of herbicides. Yes. And yes. I do want to make a quick specific thing about aesthetics. That there's plum trees, there's no recognition in the report about every year these beautiful plum trees come out for 1 to 2 months. And there's somebody's going around with a red, orange thing squirting on trees to knock down. Well, they want to destroy a bunch of beautiful plum trees right where the road turns around, where they built a concrete drainage on the road. So I believe that instead of goats and pesticides, another thing to do is to concentrate on the ivy and the maintenance. Forget about the trees except for a few really thought out selective loggings, but employ at-risk and underprivileged youth throughout San Francisco and create a public-private partnership partnership that they can work there and do it in a slow, labor-intensive way, give them $10 an hour plus a health plan. They could work 4 hours a day very slowly, like the slow food movement, the slow weeding movement, clear out all this undergrowth, and then they could spend a half a day learning. They can go to the UC and get health training, or they can get horticultural training half a day so they don't have to work like slaves. This would open up the forest to the whole city and bring all the underprivileged, people who could really appreciate this beautiful natural area in a whole different way. So I don't believe they should go forward with this plan, and they should do a really low-key type of, and continue maintenance based on the ground cover and try to do it that way to make it a healthier forest. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Craig Morton, M-O-R-T-O-N, and I live in the neighborhood at Schrader and Belgrade, so I'm in this area. One of the most beautiful things about this area is the wild forest, and it's incredibly dense and deep, and it's you don't need to do what's been done in Presidio, which is like clear-cut everything, and people that are concerned about it, yeah, it's a lovely forest, and we love trees, but what's better is when you can see through the trees and have a view. I think there's enough views in San Francisco already. I mean, every hilltop you got views. You don't need to go everywhere and see a view from every spot. It's just full of animals. It's beautiful. I'm not that concerned about the fire danger. There seems to be conflicting evidence on both sides. It's I'm sure there's some dangers, some thinning of the whatever. I mean, there needs to be some maintenance, but just to go in there and just whack it. We don't need more chemicals. We don't need all the chopping the trees. And it's just a wild and beautiful place. I've been up there a lot in the past. I used to go up on the top before that meadow was created. The first time I went up there and I saw the meadow, well, we didn't need this. We don't need 30-foot spacing. We don't need 60-foot spacing. And it's a beautiful, wild, probably the most wild place left in San Francisco, for sure. And it's also a very spiritual place. Not everybody needs to go there. If you want to go there, you can go there. Not everybody needs to be able to go everywhere all the time. So anyway, thank you.
Oh, hi, I'm John Manning, M-A-N-N-I-N-G, and I live at 118 Woodland Avenue. And grew up in the city, and I live in the neighborhood, and I hike in the forest very often, as do my wife and kids, who are fifth-generation San Franciscans. And anyhow, I understand it seems totally logical. You need to do some work there, and I'm real sympathetic to the folks who live along like Stanton Street and such, and they're close to eucalyptus. So that's great. But anyway, it seems that you're here to listen to our concerns. So I'll make it easy for you. I have 5 concerns I'd just like to point out. One is, I think that UCSF should disclose the number of trees that they intend to cut down. I think that number must be readily knowable. You've done a 1,100-page report and really talked to a lot of experts, and the folks on the Save Sutro website came up with a calculation. You guys got to have a real calculation, so we're not all just guessing 30,000. I suspect the reason you don't want to disclose it is because it's a big number, 10,000 or something. But anyway, if you could disclose it, that's my number 1 comment. My second comment is, I think the term demonstration area is slightly misleading. If you look on the map, those 4 demonstration areas, I don't know, I'm not a botanist, but it measures up to a quarter of the forest. So it kind of seems like more than a demonstration area. I think that nomenclature is a little bit misleading. And then third thing, I'll make those last 3 quick, but third comment is just spacing. I don't know botany, but thanks. 30 feet seems really wide. Fourth thing, I don't think anybody's mentioned yet, but just wind effects, like wind in Coal Valley, in Parnassus Heights area, where a lot of us live. Fifth thing is pesticides. It's been said already. So thanks.
The next 4 speakers are Ronnie Rosnicki, Lulu Carpenter, Scott Jacobs, and Dolan Irkle. Oh no, you already spoke, sorry. And Anastasia Grigsliter. I'm the first one. So, Ronnie Brodzinski, okay, that person is left. Lulu Carpenter, that person is left. Scott Jacobs, left. No. And so Anastasia?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're Scott Jacobs?
I'm Scott Jacobs. I live on Edgewood Avenue with my pregnant wife and 3 young boys, aged 6, 5, and 2. And so I do a lot of trail running up on Mount Sutro, and I love it up there. I agree with a lot of the concerns that a lot of people have brought up tonight about, erosion, wind, noise, especially the herbicide piece. My wife and boys and I, we go hiking up there every New Year's Day morning. We hike up to the top of the mountain together, and we really enjoy that space. And the big concern I have about herbicides is that, I understand the need to make the forest healthy and safe, but I also really know that I need to keep my family healthy and safe. And in some of the places in the draft EIR, they talk about there are risks for women that sit down in shorts where you could get seepage of these herbicides through clothing that can really affect women of childbearing age. And so I think that if there is some sort of management to be done, I think it needs to be done in a way that does not involve any herbicides or any chemicals or pesticides or anything like that. I think it needs to be done in some sort of just well thought out, much more natural way. And I think that I would just like to echo what a lot of other people have said, which is this is kind of this magic place in the middle of a very dense urban environment, a place that I love to retreat to and kind of get away from the city for a little while. You don't have to go too far into the city to kind of forget where you are. You don't hear the city outside anymore, and don't see all the buildings and all the people. So I would just say be very careful, because it's hard to kind of undo what you do in these sort of circumstances. They take a long time to grow, and as someone said earlier, you can wipe them out if you're not careful. Thanks.
My name is Anastasia Glickstern, Glikstern, and I'm San Francisco resident for over 30 years. I'm not so close neighbor. I live just next to Mount Davidson, and I thought that 1,600 trees to fell on Mount Davidson was a lot, but it fails in comparison for this 30,000 trees, like 3/4. And that's, if you look at the spacing and the description, it's a low estimate. It's more than 30,000. It's unbelievable. So for the statement, the only acceptable way to go is no project alternative. This project is insane. I am wondering how much taxpayers' money was already wasted on this plan. I was also thinking about new UC logo and wondering if it's the same group of people which is involved in this plan which designs new logo. Do the planners know that the global warming is upon us? And I heard recently on NPR that low parts in San Francisco will experience flooding in about 50 years. And each tree is to be treasured, not cut. And the concern about tree falling of the property do not mean cutting of 30,000 trees. The trees which are near the property can be managed, like looked at and cut if necessary, or pruned if necessary. It doesn't need to be 30 feet spacing in the tree. It will destroy the forest, the wind, the noise. I don't know who dreamed it up. And I read the FAQ, frequently asked questions, and it's all so misleading. The first one, is UCSF really going to cut down 30,000 trees? Yes. The proper answer is yes, more than that. But even if it's half of this amount, or this amount is going to be cut. It's still outrageous. And those demonstration projects, why wasting money on demonstration projects if you're not going to do the complete project, which FAQ says? Why waste taxpayers' money on this demonstration? Does UCSF really cares about preserving Mount Sutro? The UCSF says yes, but it looks like no, they don't. They want to destroy it, and I don't know what the motives, as many speakers said already. The use of herbicides, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's medical institution, it's research institution. How can you do that? Thank you. Thank you.
The next four speakers are Dee Seligman, Mary McAllister, Jerry Baer, and Tim LaFarge.
My name is Dee Seligman, Seligman. I live within half a mile of Mount Sutro, and my husband and I walk there for recreation. I'm opposed to the felling of the Mount Sutro eucalyptus trees for several reasons, but I just will speak of one tonight. I think UCSF is subscribing to a 21st Western U.S. cultural construction about eucalyptus trees rather than understanding how they function in our complex urban ecosystem. How we see trees has always depended on where we live and the time in which we live. New England farmers saw them as weeds because they wanted fields for animals. Later colonists viewed them more as commodities, good for barrels and ship masts. But 19th century Europeans, who had very few forests, felt it was unthinkable to chop down trees. Today we bear the fruit of Thoreau, Emerson, and Muir, and look to trees as antidotes to commercial culture and as places of refuge, except in San Francisco, where redwoods and oaks carry this spiritual cachet, but eucalyptus trees are perceived as messy invaders planted here after the earthquake in an effort to provide quick lumber. I would add that there's a certain irony that people of European ancestry, including myself, accuse eucalyptus of being an invasive species, an invasive exotic, displacing native species. We know now that, in fact, eucalyptus are not good for lumber, but we also know that they're good for monarch butterflies as winter habitat and as places for as many as 40 different bird species to nest and forage. They resist wind, they help prevent erosion, especially on steep hillsides. They sequester large amounts of carbon. Finally, by moving species around and introducing the eucalyptus, we humans have actually increased the biodiversity of our urban forest. Most cities are busy planting thousands of trees to mitigate climate change and pollution, but UCSF is busy removing trees and planting grasses and shrubs instead, out of what I consider a misguided construction of eucalyptus trees. Thank you.
My name is Mary McAllister. I lived in the city for 30 years, and I worked here at UCSF for 10 years. So I know it's a very windy place, a cold, windy place. Why? Because it's a mountain, 900 feet high, and it faces directly from the wind that comes from the ocean. Wind, as it travels uphill, accelerates. By the time it reaches the top of this hill, it is really blowing hard. You're going to destroy the windbreak, and you're going to subject your neighbors who live on the leeward side of Mount Sutro to a great deal of wind. You're going to subject yourselves to a great deal of wind. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to subject your patients and your students and your staff to this miserable climate that they are now protected from? And this increased wind is going to cause the few trees that remain to fail, because trees develop their resistance to the wind in a very specific environment. The trees are now protected by their neighbors. It's a densely populated forest, 740 trees per acre. 45,000 trees on 61 acres. It's a mathematical fact. 740 trees per acre. You're going to reduce that to 30 trees per acre, subjecting the trees that remain to more wind than they are adapted to. And they are going to fall over, which is probably what your strategy is. Because then you've taken care of everything, and you've got the clear cut, which is probably the objective of your plan.
I agree with almost everything that's been said this evening. The difference is, my name is Jerry Bear, and my house burnt in the 1991 firestorm in Oakland. And it was whoever gave that gentleman information from FEMA that it was the eucalyptus. In point of fact, it was native shrubbery that started that fire on a Saturday. It continued on a Sunday, and it burnt 3,400 homes. And in fact, most of the homes did not burn because of trees. They burned because of the overhead wires. And the wires started burning and went from house to house to house. FEMA's report was a small report. The final report, which I have read, and in fact, one of our board members on the Hills Conservation Network helped write it, states very clearly that most of the fire was caused by other than trees, and that if you look at what's going to happen here, I agree with what has been said. When you cut trees down that are large and living trees, you're destroying what nature wanted to be there. If you wanted native trees, native plants, you get rid of not only that the eucalyptus, but the pine, and you get rid of magnolias, you get rid of roses. I mean, we can go on and on and on if you want to talk about getting rid of native. I think it's ludicrous to look at a report and state that two people looked at this and stated that that's a fact when the reports from the East Bay are tremendous on how bad it is to cut trees down. I find it interesting that UC Berkeley and UC San Francisco are the only two universities in this area talking about cutting trees down so that they can build other buildings for commercial use. Thank you.
My name is Tim LaForge. I've been living in San Francisco for 11 years. My wife, Vance, doctor, just like a retired psychologist, but still practicing to some extent. I have forestry degrees from the University of Maine and master's from Yale and a PhD in forest genetics from Michigan State University. I've been retired for over 10 years, and I keep hearing nonsense. Left coast, right coast, east coast, west coast about forests and everything else. Most of America is an urban, we're mostly an urban society, and we love our forests and our countryside, and we worship them. But most of us don't know much about managing them at all, and including most of the people in this room. So I'm not making many friends here, but I'm going to try to influence your thinking just a little bit. I practice forest genetics, which is effectiveness in Georgia for tree improvement, for improved timber growth, period. I'm not an ecologist, but I've worked with ecologists at times and had no problems when they were well informed and educated. But out here, constantly battling with the Sierra Club and with the Society, or in Georgia too, they were constantly on the back of forests and unpopular people because we apparently were evil doers. We cut down trees. Cutting down trees, you have to thin trees, thin forests to manage them properly. Period. That's it. So you have to say, by the way, it's not, I think it's been stated already, it's from Washington. No eucalyptus native to this country at all. The natives of Australia, they're all imported, every last tree, and they've been here since about 1849, and that's it. Before here, this era, there are very few trees growing here. Nearby, some Ponderosa pine and some other pines maybe, but not right here, nothing. Zilch. It's barren. So we have a forest, a man-made forest. And Sutro and Mount Davidson where I sometimes walk, no native trees at all. Most of the Cuban imported from Australia. That's what, 4,000 miles away, wherever it is. Thank
you. The last four speakers, I believe, are Jason Hemp, John Bardis, Robert Laws, and David Emanuel. Mr. Hemp.
Hi, my name is Jason Hemp, HEMP. I'm a recent San Francisco resident, even though I've been in the Bay Area for over 12 years now. Something I've really grown to appreciate here in the Bay Area, and particularly in San Francisco, is our greenery. I grew up in Phoenix, which there isn't that many trees, and I think it's very beautiful, and I'm glad I moved here. I hope I stay here for the rest of my life. One thing that seems very rare and delicate here in San Francisco is trees. I look at places like Kite Park and Park, and I think the microphone's
Don't count this as part of his time.
Yeah, sorry.
Battery.
Is this working better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to express a few concerns about the draft report. I haven't been able to read all 1,000 or so pages since I'm a working professional and I don't have a lot of time, but I will make a great effort after tonight's meeting. But the highlights that I've read concern me particularly about how to manage Mount Sutro, the maintenance of it, such as cutting the trees and then treating the tree trunks with certain herbicides that sound not helpful to the environment. So I would encourage maybe looking at alternatives. I do think that it is important to do some sort of maintenance in maintaining a healthy forest, such as clearing maybe dead trees or dried underbrush. So I think it does make sense to do to have some sort of maintenance plan. But what I've read so far in the draft report, I think could use further tweaking. This is my personal opinion, and as many that have expressed their opinion here tonight, I also support. So I would just urge that maybe solicit a little more input and maybe reduce the scope of what's called the demonstration area to maybe a smaller area, and to get additional input on that. Thank you.
My name is John Vargas. In the 70s and 80s, was active in the Inland Sunset Action Committee and was a past president of the Inland Sunset Action Committee. And the Inland Sunset Action Committee challenged the EIR process along with other entities like the Sierra Club that took place regarding the Margaret Hospital and Dental School building. And they prevailed in the lower courts, which led to the creation of an agreement with the regions that 40 acres of open space will be preserved, will be all in perpetuity on Mount Sutro. This process right now is an environmental review process. Well, the university has had its environmental review processes and has not really been in compliance with the law. In that case, back in the 70s, in the 80s, in the case of Laurel Heights, where there were biomedical hazards, biomedical research for biological warfare not being disclosed, eventually went to the Supreme Court of the state and ruled against the university that it had not complied with the environmental laws. This environmental process now is providing an opportunity again for us to speak, but it also raises some real questions as how good faith of the university can be relied upon in this whole process in view of the past experience. I would hope that the environmental review of this project would also provide background information about its previous work that was done by the university and what actions had to be taken regarding its failure not to abide by the CEQA in those cases. And I would hope that people who have been active in this really be true to the point that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and this applies here for Mount Sutro and the forest.
My name is Ronald Laws, and I will be mercifully brief. I have lived the last 50, almost 50 of my 83 years immediately across the street from Sutro Forest. I've seen it rain, I've seen the fog in it, I've seen the nesting red-tailed hawks, I've seen the fire, I've seen the falling logs, and I've hiked through that forest and my children have played there. I am an unapologetic tree hugger and have been for most of my life, or at least my conscious life. I have listened to the outpourings here this evening, a litany of emotional, aesthetic, romantic, and even spiritual connections to the people have to the forest. And I share those. But I also realize that they are quite irrelevant to what we're here to discuss this evening. The issue here is actually this. What are the consequences of leaving the forest to run on its own? What are the implications in terms of the surrounding community and of the health of the forest? I've heard many people express opinions on that, but their opinions, like my opinion on that, are worthless. We've had 3 experts here who have spoken to the subject, and they're the ones that should be listened to. 2 are for and 2 are against. I would propose only to the regents that the analysis be made on the basis of the facts and not our feelings, and that they scrutinize with the utmost care the recommendations of the respective foresters with regard to what should be done there.
Hi, I'm David Emanuel. I'm with the San Francisco Forest Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization. We represent neighborhood groups and people who are very concerned about parks, open spaces, and our forest areas. We have great concerns with this plan and how it's laid out. And the first problem is with the demonstration area. So you're proposing a 1 year for several areas to be a demonstration area. And I'd like to draw your attention to Hawk Hill in Marin Headlands, which recently cut down 200 trees because they were non-native in an effort to restore and save butterflies, the mission blue butterfly. And after 1 year, there has been no difference. And I think we're likely to see that there will never be a difference or an improvement. These trees have been here for hundreds of years, and although they're not native, They do serve a purpose, and they support an ecosystem. So I would also draw your attention to the San Francisco city that on a small scale has done some native plant restoration in places like Pine Lake at Stern Grove, now in Indian Ocean out on the east side. And these small scale projects have been abject failures. If you go there now, you see piles of brush where things have not grown. And it was an attempt again to turn back the botanical clock. It hasn't worked. And now the city of San Francisco is proposing a large, massive scale where they will remove 18,500 trees throughout the city parks and all the way down to Sharp Park and Pacifica. And it hasn't worked on a small scale, so we don't see how it can work on a large scale, which would of course require herbicides and lots of maintenance and restrict a lot of public access. So we're very concerned with your program, and personally I'm very concerned with your community relations staff that has labeled people that disagree or have dissenting opinions as being misguided or having misinformation. And we're all going off of your DEIR report. And in there it specifically says the worst case scenario or the massive amount would remove 27,500 trees. Our calculations show it would be much greater than 30,000 trees. But that is in your plan. And you could implement that if you decide after 1 year that that is going to be your best forest management practice. So I urge you to not just listen to the community. I really listen tonight. And I think what you're hearing is that the community is very opposed to the plan you have now and how you want to move forward. And I hope you embrace the suggestions and the changes that we're asking for. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers who wish to speak? Could you please identify yourself and spell your name, since we don't have a speaker card for you, sir?
Yes, my name is Yogi.
Can you use the microphone?
Yes, my name is Yogi, and I live in the neighborhood.
Could you spell your name for last name, please?
Yes, Angrish, Angrish. So here's what I'd like to say. You will be destroying a lot of life. You will be destroying a lot of animal habitat. You will be blanketing this beautiful land with poison. To see this as improving the health of the forest requires monumental stupidity.
Thank you for your comments on the draft DIR. We will prepare written responses to these comments in a comments and response chapter of the final DIR. Please be sure to include your name and contact information on the speaker card or sign-in sheet, and we will notify you when the final DIR becomes available. Good night.